GrgaMrga here, and today I have a 10 plus tips and tricks for my time at Portia video for you. We're going to go over some techniques you can use, different small tips, whether it be gameplay wise or settings wise or something that comes in handy, you know. Quite the simple guide video for you here. So without further ado, let's get into the tip number 1. Alright, so the first tip is going to be how you can get a lot of fertilizer rather quickly by killing llamas. The main ingredient that you need to get in order to get a lot of fertilizer for your crops is basically animal feces, and you can get them from llamas. So this is one way of farming it I've found to be quite useful. There's 3 spots here. There's one where I am right here, and there's a spot over here, and then there's a spot like way up here. There's like 3 spots, and you're going to just be killing them and going back and forward. One thing worth mentioning is if you have a triple barrel snakebite or one of the other guns, you can use the gun to easily kill them on distance. I will be doing this. If you don't have a gun, just use your sword or your fist items, whatever you have. I'm going to be using my guns though. It's a quite simple and fast way to do it. And then once you've killed that first pack, you just move up to the next pack, kill all of them. Also, the higher level you are, the better. Then you move over to the last one, who's over here. Kill all of them. And from there on, you just move back. And some of the first ones should have respawned by now. And yeah, you can see if we move all the way back here, it's one respawn there anyway. It's one here. You just continuously do this. As for skills that you can use the chance of double loot. That will help you a little bit. And that's it for the tip number 1. Okay, so tip number 2 is gonna be that early on in the game you want to create a lot of machines, especially these small stone furnaces, because it takes next to nothing to create them, and they are super good to have just a lot of. You can see it only takes 10 wood and 10 stone, and you have basically what you need. So you need to create a lot of these, but also all the other machines, as many as you can get, or at least more than just, you know, 1 or 2. And the reason for this is because the game doesn't really tell you a whole lot about the fact that you can do this. They just sort of say, go and make the first one. And then, I know at least for me, in my playthrough, it was going very slow for me because, you know, obviously having more you can create more at the same time. It goes way faster. You can effectively 5-double your speed, and you can craft multiple of the same type of material, but like different. So like if I need glass and copper bars, bronze bars, or charcoal, I can do that at the same time. So that is just a simple but I think useful for many people tip number 2. Okay, so tip number 3 is going to be about the market prices and how you can utilize them to save a buck or even make a buck. So if you go to any store, you'll notice that there's a tag up here that says market price, which changes pretty much daily. And what this means is how much is everything in the game worth right now. The game is completely dynamic in the way like that prices changes, but it's static across all shops, which means that everything right now is worth 79% of its 100% value, which is on days that it's 100%. So right now we're below 100, which means that right now is a bad day for selling items. If I were to sell all of these items that I have these talismans, I will make 7.5k gold, that's a good amount, but it could be 631 more if it was 100%. And even if I were on, say, 130% day, it would be even more than that. So on a day like this, it's better to buy. So if I wanted to buy something that otherwise would be a little expensive, I could get it for quite a bit less, as you can see here. This changes daily. I've seen some people talk about it changing depending on what weather it is that day. I do not know the extent of this, but supposedly the lowest it can go is 70% market value, and the highest it can go is 140 or 50% market value. Okay, that's it for this tip. Okay, so tip number 4 here is going to be to organize your items, and this is a thing that's going to save you a ton of time. And your organization doesn't have to be very strict or anything. You just have to have a general idea about where your items are, and that's the most important. So for me, I know that this box is my metal mining ore box, but it's the box that is processed ones. So there are some unprocessed stuff in here, but mostly it's processed items, and a few extra ones, just because, it doesn't. I don't have enough to fill that up. But I know the next one is unprocessed. So all of these are just, raw things, not processed. And the next one again is the same, just extra, because this is some of the stuff you're gonna need a lot of. I know that this is my wood and string and cloth box, tree drops basically, and cloth, wood, strings. I know that this one is my edible box, which means that I have edible items in here, and so on and so forth. Just try to, generally speaking, categorize all of your items. Okay, tip number 5 is combat tips, and mostly for when you're clearing the dungeons. And the first tip is that if you have a gun and a sword with a charge effect on, which is basically all of the swords, there is not a charge effect on the corpse hammer, and there is not a charge effect on knuckles either. But the tip here is to avoid taking damage. What you can do on isolated target, like one-on-ones, is you can shoot 1 to 2 times before you use your sword, and then the sword will charge up at them. So let me show you. 1, 2, 3. You can even shoot more times on the slower ones, and then as it approaches, swap sword and then start using the sword, and this way you will take way less damage. And you can't do this in big groups of mobs because they're gonna start range attacking you and whatnot. Another tip is that you can dodge roll, and on some effects, not all of them in the game, especially boss swing attacks, it doesn't actually matter if you move out of the way. As long as you're in roll animation, it doesn't really matter if you're there or not, as long as you're in roll animation. And that will just drastically reduce the amount of healing items that you need to bring along to clear dungeons. Okay, so tip number 6 is gonna be about time and how you can speed it up and slow it down. So this doesn't affect in-game time, but in real-life time, it's sort of a manipulation technique. So the first thing I think a lot of people don't realize is if you pause the game, like doing this, time pauses in-game completely. So now if you're tapping into a video or whatever, and you don't want your in-game time to increase, you can do this. And then the way you can speed it up, which is if you have something that you want to create, like an item. Let's say, for example, I want to create charcoal, and I don't want to wait for this. I want to wait like 10 minutes for this, or like in this case it's hours. Then what you can do is you can take a DD stop. Is it take 47 minutes here, but that obviously doesn't take 47 seconds in real life. and then you can take it back to where we started. That will take an extra 47 minutes, and then what you do is you just run back over here, and that should now have basically smelted. So there you go. Alright, tip number 7 is that you can file commissions at the Civil Corps, and most people might know this, but it's more handy and should be utilized more by especially new materials that you don't quite have yet or have access to. You can file in, if you want, let's say spines, you can say how many you need, and then you can say what duration, how long is this up for, and the longer it's up, the higher chance that somebody is gonna take it. But in my experience, it's going to get taken pretty much no matter what. And here's how much it's gonna cost for you to get that many items. You can say 150 max. It's gonna cost you about 1000 gold to get spines. And here's the other thing that a lot of people don't know about, is that ruin diving, that every level that you have completed in the ruins, you can actually go and ask the Civil Corps to clear for you, and it will tell you what the loot you'll get here is. And then you can say how many times you want them to clear that level, and then you can post it. And here you can see the commissions that you have already filed. Okay, it's gonna do it for this one tip. Right, for tip number 8, we are going to be talking about the museum and why it might be more useful than you think it is. First of all, every few items that you donate, you get a donation reward. For example, you get a trash bin you can place at your home, get you some stats. You get a pretty decent top hat that has decent stats actually. And if you donate 10 items, you get your own recovery machine that you can use at home, which is super useful, so you don't have to go to the research area. The top hat you can see here has max 120 HP, but it has 10 critical chance, which is critical chances just the best in my opinion for any sort of increasing your damage kind of stuff. And then here's the big one, is that for every person that sees your item, there's a chance that that item gives you reputation with that person, and you get reputation with the city. So it's a way to and speak of the devil, there we go. Somebody saw one of my items. That's incredible timing. And you get reputation just passively, which is otherwise a bit of a pain to get. Okay, that'll do it for this tip. Alright, for tip number 9, we're going to be looking at some useful settings for the game and other stuff that you might not know about. So if you press escape and go into options, in the game settings you have some initial camera sensitivity changes, and these will just be like XY sensitivity. Auto camera is basically the follow of your character and like panning around with you. There's language, you can remove voice on, which means that the characters that normally would be talking is not gonna talk. You can choose not to show your accessories, the free accessory items that you have. You can choose not to show your hat. You can remove lightning, all of that is pretty good. Minimap rotate is just if you select it on, the minimap will rotate to show you where you're looking rather than like being static. Can be useful. I don't personally play with that because I got used to the other one, like the just static one where it's you're the one who's moving. I got used to that one. Other settings that is pretty good is that obviously you can do full screen, stuff like this. You should probably play in full screen, and at your resolution and at your frame rate should be the same as your refresh rate of your monitor. One really good thing about this game is that you can take the res and you can lower the res for people that has worse computers to like an 8th res. And then here's a quick tip I learned while recording this video is if you're recording my time at Portia, turn off motion blur, because if you have motion blur on, it becomes really well, like this. And if you turn it off, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. If you turn it off, it becomes a little bit more watchable for people, less motion blur. Still some motion blur, but that is completely down to me and not the game. Okay, that does it for the setting tips. Okay, for tip number 10, and the final tip, is going to be the handbook, and a little tip I found while using this. So it can be a little bit hideous to go through all of these to find like the new machine you've unlocked all the way at the bottom or at the end. But a thing you can do is actually you can go to assembly index, and not only can you simply scroll through them and whatnot, it shows you which ones is new. So you can simply flick to the bottom. I need a transmission thing. It's new. Click here, and there you go. It's much faster. So that'll do it for this small 10 tips video, and I hope you liked it. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you really loved it, then make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to stay tuned. You can follow me on the socials, they will be in the description, Twitter, Facebook, or Reddit, and leave any advice in the comment down below, or if there's something I missed, you can also leave that down there. But I'll see you guys in the next one.